I think Ishita will introduce her.
Oops. Okay. Too many Bhoomi cooks here, so anyone can go ahead.
Yes, so I think I have the honor of introducing Smitha. So welcome, Smitha. I think we've had our interactions when you were a fellow here at Bhoomi. And I'll do a quick introduction of you. So Smitha is a person who studied to be an engineer. And I think in our chat a while back, she says she started to value that now, but I think her soul is that of a crafter creator. And I think when she was growing up, despite all the norms and benchmarks that were set for her, I think the soul of the crafter creator remained alive somewhere. And in spite and despite anything, finally she's taken up crafting. And she has this indomitable spirit, which is very unputdownable, because she followed her heart finally and she started creating magic with her hands. So she crafts with her hands and with different material. She wears many hats actually. So she's a mother, she's a designer, a facilitator. I know she's a baker, she loves to bake. And her spirit comes alive, I think, when she crafts with her hands. So currently she is working with Prakriya, and I think she enjoys working with children. And the passion that she has for her craft, actually that gets transferred to the kids. And she brings alive the craft that she crafts with her hands, and the children learn from her. And I think as a facilitator, she enjoys interacting with kids and passing on the skills to the children. So that's Smitha in a nutshell. Anybody wants to add, you can. And I'm sure we'll hear all about her journey of how she has come into becoming a crafter.
Farah, if you would like to add, since you.
I think Ishita has covered almost everything. One thing that, I mean, in addition to what Ishita said, one thing that I find quite remarkable about her is the way she works with the feedback, and I think that has helped her in making so many transitions and in building her own convictions and strengthening her convictions. And so she really, anything you tell her and she takes it so seriously and works on it, and then you see the results. So I think that has really helped her in strengthening her convictions and following her path.
Thank you, Ishita, Farah, meaning nobody's, said it out aloud like this. So it really feels, really touches somewhere. Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you, Bhoomi, for inviting me over. I'm always a part of Bhoomi because I keep coming to Sante, being at Prakriya also. I get to meet all of you offline also. I'm really, really happy about that. And yes, crafting is my thing. The magic of the hands, something that I'm so passionate about, brings me alive. It's a fairy tale land kind of a thing for me with crafting. I think I'll start with a presentation and then go on. So Adil. The first slide. The first picture, yes. Thank you. So yeah, this is me. This is a paper doll version of myself that I created 2 years back. And this represents more of the activities that I'm very passionate about. Some things I do differently and some things, the different things that I do. So all of these existed even before Bhoomi. Yeah, all of this. Now what Bhoomi added to this was Bhoomi made me celebrate myself. And I think without that part, it was somewhere incomplete. The picture of having so many hands, multitasking. There was a beauty element that Bhoomi added to this. And so, yeah, my son, baking, crafting, sustainable living was something we'd already started on, composting, sustainable menstruation. All of that was even before Bhoomi. But yes, there was an essence that was missing there. Bhoomi added that. So, yes, the next slide, Adil. So my timeline, the transition of how all of this came into picture, these are the major highlights from 2001. So 2001 is when I was doing my +2, and that was a year of extreme pressure to perform, because there is a +2 exam tension, and then I had to go to tuitions despite being good in academics in the sense of rote learning. But despite all of this, I had to go into tuitions because that was what everybody were doing. And my parents found it right that even I had to do it. Also, during the exam, being said that do not leave an answer space empty. Even if you don't know the answer, pick up words from the question, do a mix, fill up the space, you get at least 2 marks there. So, such things was not to my liking. I didn't, that is when the trigger started. Is this what I really wanted through my schooling? And the first year of engineering, 2001, again, I entered engineering, electronics and communication engineering. That was again not something that I was very fond of. I had got a free seat for architecture in REC, but unfortunately, it wasn't I wasn't allowed to do that, and I had to go into engineering, electronics and communication, EC, in 2001. And I remember the first year, our English teacher asked me to come and speak on something, and it happened to be the education system that I spoke about. I don't know what, but that was the most alive thing for me then. And I spoke about how wrong things are. I didn't want to study just for marks, and all of those came up then. But after 2001, I don't think there was. After engineering, I didn't study much, so yeah, that ended there, and got into campus placement software again after. Luckily, I was in the corporate field for only 4 years. Software, hardware testing, aerospace, content management, all of it. And I wasn't happy. I realized that was not what I wanted to do. It was a big missing something there. And luckily, I would say 2009, when we were trying to conceive, is when I was diagnosed with PCOD. And if not for PCOD, I don't know if I would have taken back crafting. So crafting was a passion I had since my school days, but was never able to put enough time into it because of college work and all of it. There wasn't enough dedicated time I was putting into crafting. But because of PCOD, I had to go into a stress-free life, engage in something that made me just calm down and relax. And then I started with crafting, started making things, and also started blogging about it then in hastakala.creations.blogspot. That was started in 2009. And then 2 years later, my son was born. After that, I think when I became a parent is when I became more aware of the environment we are in. With a child in picture, you want the best of everything for him. If not the best, at least something not so bad. So we started with composting, and all of it started when he was a kid because we wanted to be a good example, and such things started coming into our thoughts. And yeah, 2013, when he was 2.5, I restarted crafting. He happens to be a very silent kid who lets me work peacefully, doesn't mess up with my craft stuff and all of that. So yeah, I started crafting again and moved to Facebook by then. And 2013, this article appeared in a Malayalam magazine. It was on recycled crafts. And this was a huge, huge recognition for me, because until then, I was not the kind who would talk about it so much. But when this appeared, even my family members, they were like, oh, okay, there is something in it then. And I made my father by heart the entire paragraph there. It was like that for me. And so, yeah, this was one major turning point. And I thought, yeah, maybe I should just continue with this. Again, went into more of crafting, more of experiments, exploring and learning. And 2016, again, there was a pressure to perform. So I don't know if I should take up Hastakala as a business, which I never wanted to. I was doing a little bit of sales then through 2 stores here. But that again wasn't very satisfying. For me, it is the joy of working with the hands more than the number and the money part of it. So yeah, so it was either somehow take Hastakala into a business mode, or something else, something that could be meaningful. And so my son was in Prakriya by then. So the husband knew Prakriya even before he had joined nursery, before the son joined nursery. So we had decided on Prakriya as his school. And one day behind his nursery bus, I saw this poster for a teacher training program. And that was sometime in June end, towards the end of June 2016. And fortunately, my husband was also into education. And this happened to be one topic we would always agree on. Education was like most of our conversations would be around education. And then I told him there is this teacher training program. Why don't I try? And he was like, yeah, do it. Bhoomi College Prakriya. Yes, go ahead. And then Adil, one click there. And Bhoomi happened. Yeah, this was our first day at Bhoomi. It was a difficult day because after a gap of 7 years, I was deciding to get back into a routine. Not a 9 to 5 routine, but I had a kid in picture. I had all those hands that I had to manage and balance. So yeah, but I went ahead with Bhoomi. Next. The Bhoomi journey, I would say it was not only holistic education that I did at Bhoomi, it was kind of a holistic living, I would say, because education definitely was there. We did learn about the technicalities of education, but even beyond that, because of having classes together with the sustainable and management, science and management sustainability group, we did have a lot of common modules and external facilitators coming in. So it was a holistic living, a complete package that way. Now, why Bhoomi? Yeah, these were the only 3 intentions I had when I came for the Bhoomi interview for holistic education. I had to do something meaningful. There was this curiosity about education system, but I had made the statement, I will not be a teacher. If the requirement is I have to be a teacher after the course, and I'm not doing this course. I was very clear. I don't know why. And then I wanted to be in a like-minded community. I didn't know this community then for sure, but I didn't mind, trying it out. Because until then I was only said to be weird and silly in all my thoughts and actions and doings. But then, yeah, why not try out something different? So that is how I entered Bhoomi after the holistic education interview. Adil, next. Discoveries at Bhoomi. Now, this is a very small list of my discoveries at Bhoomi. I can go on and on throughout the session talking about my discoveries at Bhoomi. So these are only the major highlights that I've listed out here. The main thing is of self-acceptance, because like I said, I was always said to be weird and silly, and when you grow up in an environment of competition and comparison, you somewhere lose your identity. In fact, you even fail to recognize that there could be something as your own identity. I don't think I even had that kind of a thought before Bhoomi. So at Bhoomi, yeah, I realized my thoughts, feelings, actions were valid too. This happens to be the place I have laughed the most, I have cried the most, because it was not very easy. It is a journey of you have to learn, relearn, unlearn. Then acceptance is not easy at times. Letting go is not easy. So it was a very emotional roller coaster ride for me at Bhoomi. And there were so many joy and experiences and memories that we've created with our batch of 20. We were a small group of 20 then. And yeah, Vaishnavi and I were in the same group. We still are very thick friends. Sankalan process work. Another people would say I'm addicted to Sankalan because I attended all sessions of Sankalan. But I don't know, for me, Sankalan was not only a break from the routine work of balancing those hands, it was an inner work which sometimes I didn't spend enough time on. Balancing all of that, I somehow would miss on reflecting or asking difficult questions, facing reality. All of that was sometimes difficult. So Sankalan was a good time to think and reflect upon all of this. Those 5 days at Sankalan, coming together as a community with sometimes complete strangers. But it was amazing. Even Dharmesh, Vaishnavi and I, we've been in the same Sankalan group. So it's a great bond that we all share. Yeah, at Bhoomi, another thing was that I'm a constant learner and I'm very, very proud of it because, the child in me is still alive. There is always a curiosity to know more, to learn more in things that I find interesting. So yeah, that learning process was never ending for me. And at Bhoomi, there was this freedom to question, which I don't know if it existed during my school days or whether I didn't make use of it. But at Bhoomi, I would very easily say no. I was a difficult student that way. Any module put up, I would immediately start questioning. Communication expression, okay, why do you need to make a video for this? And all of that would come. I don't know where I found the guts to ask so many questions, but I'm so glad that Ishita, Farah, Rama, all of them pushed me beyond my comfort zone. They said, if not a video, at least do a PPT. I don't know, the level of freedom I had there made me explore more of myself. And now I make decent videos because we have online classes going on. So yeah, I've learned video making too. Yeah, now also from only doing to why I was doing those hands that I had, all those hands that I still have. So there was a deeper understanding of all of them, even if it is with crafting. Sita would many times refer that crafting is a second contributor after agriculture. And I would be like all goosebumps, though I was not into traditional Indian handicrafts or anything, that I was a small contributor there was something very, it would take me high. It was like that, hearing to all of those at Bhoomi. And Hastakalas first big showcasing, the small picture there at the bottom was Bhoomi Utsav. My first exhibition happened there in 2016, October 2nd. And it was Vaishnavi who had come home to help me with the tagging and all of that. So yes, I had a lot of help from everybody in Bhoomi. I still remember the day morning, Farah gave me all the confidence to go through the Utsav, the exhibition, and put it forward. It was just a totally different experience. And there was Sonam Wangchuk who visited the stall, and the statement that he said was, I don't know if he'd come across paper products earlier, but he said, Smitha, you can be an inspiration to so many women. And for me, that was like, meaning, I'm so glad Asmat brought Sonam to Bhoomi. And hearing that from Sonam, I've still not achieved anything in that, but it's still alive that I have so much to do. There is something I can contribute. That is always there. And much thanks to Sonam for that statement, which I will never ever forget. And then yes, about holistic education, I have to mention, because there was this curiosity of learning the alternate kind of, knowing more about the alternate kind of education. These were some things that really stood out for me. Multiple intelligences. It was Rishita who had done that session for me during our batch. Multiple intelligences, about the nine intelligences and learning styles, where I discovered I was a kinesthetic and a visual learner. And we had the putty tests and kind of thing where we would know about ourselves. So I think that has also helped me with the children in school, because I'm aware of these learning styles or these multiple intelligences, and I respect a child for who he or she is. There is a diversity that I always keep in mind when I'm with children. And another thing is at Bhoomi, even during our last dissertation, because of this transformation, I was always thanking Bhoomi from the bottom of my heart. Even the last presentation, I remember, thank you, Bhoomi, thank you, Bhoomi. It would genuinely come. And Farah Rama would always tell me, Smitha, it is also because you took it that way. There is also contribution that you have done. But I didn't somehow realize that until I became a facilitator at school. Because at school, when I do this with the children and I am the facilitator and they are at the receiving end, I see it as a mutual transaction that happens not just from the teacher's side. It is also equally a student's responsibility, how open or how willing the child is to push himself, herself ahead. So that was something which only came from experience. And then the internship, again, I said a no to internship. I said no, 2 months, I'd rather sit at home than do internship, because balancing those hands, my kid in nursery, so all of that was always a big question for me. But again, I had one-on-one session with Rama Farah, and they said, no, Smitha, try it out. Uh, and the timings also, the school begins at 8 o'clock. So it was impossible for me to come at 8. They said, no, we'll try and adjust. And yeah, the school too, Prakriya also allowed me to come a little later. And yeah, fortunately for me, there was a crafts mela in school that year, 2017, January 26th was a crafts mela. And I happened to somehow fit in there. And the 1.5 months of internship was so beautiful that I came back and said, I want to be a teacher. That was a level of transition, because how children received the way crafts can be seen. So it was paper crafting that we did. I was into a paper crafting group and making children, teaching them different techniques, or we made vases and all of them. And children said, Auntie, I never knew we could do so many things with paper. And there were children who gifted handmade paper articles to their relatives over the Christmas holidays. And then they came back and said, Auntie, I gifted this, Auntie, I gave them that. And I was like, Areva, there's so much that even children realize. And if I can be somewhere a catalyst to that kind of a feeling, then why not? So that is how I said, okay, I'll try being a teacher. I want to be a teacher now. So that feeling was started then. And even at our school visits to Sita School, Valley School, I could take my son along to all these places. And that was a totally different experience, meaning I wouldn't have heard of such different kind of education systems if not for Bhoomi. And also Gautama coming was a big session for me, made a big impact, because he didn't find life in education as something different. The way he integrates life, education into life is very interesting. And I had told to my facilitators, if I listen to a few more of Gautama's sessions, I'm really going to be very inspired and I will do something in life. And that was the kind of energy that he gave to our group. And we had our trips to Sharavati for deep ecology, which is an unforgettable experience, because we were only a group of 20 and I happened to be the scariest. I wasn't very used to wilderness, or I've never been a nature kind of a person. So Sharavati and the wilderness was very scary for me. And I remember the first day we landed there, we had to go on a solo walk. Completely new place and all of it. And then I had Farah in front of me, Rama behind me. And that was my solo walk. The first evening we went there, and I saw a snake skin, got dead scared, all pale and crying, and rushed back to the house there. Those are all such beautiful memories when I look back now. And Anant and Nain with their playfulness. Yeah, and the fourth day at Sharavati, we were said to do a 6-hour solo walk. And I went pale. The night before that, when they announced it, all 20 in my group looked at me. They were like, Smitha, how are you going to manage? And that night, all of them advising me, no, don't get scared, this, that. But I don't know, I was dead scared. There no network, so no use taking your mobile phone. You cannot take your watch there. You just have Copra and Jaggery to accompany you. And 6 hours in an unknown place. That was too much for me. But that morning, somehow, some Shakti entered me. I did. And from 9 to 3, I remember, I even managed to sleep in between on the hilltop view there. I don't know how, but the experience was so amazing. And the view from there is like I don't know, so many realizations there. There's a similar view at Gumlapuram also. So I get goosebumps. I said crying when I go to such viewpoints. It was just too much of realization that we are such a tiny, minuscule, this thing. But then there's so much in us. I don't know, huge learnings there at Sharavati also. And yeah, so this Sharavati incident made Sita say, Smitha, you have a lot of grit and determination. I will never ever forget those two words. From silly and weird to grit and determination is a huge transformation for me. So I always cling to those words. They give me some kind of an energy. Every time I'm low, I think of grit and determination, grit and determination. And then there's some power that comes. So Sharavati, and then the food, the network of friends that we have there, all of that, I don't know. It was the discoveries that Bhoomi can go on. I can take the entire session then. So Adil, we'll move to the next slide, please. Yes. So Bhoomi was my Janma Bhoomi. Like all those discoveries was literally like my Janma Bhoomi there. And Prakriya is my Karma Bhoomi now. So at Prakriya with the children, it is so much fun. Our classes are a lot of fun and there's a lot of interaction. Now, this is also, I would say, a relation with children that I've built over the years. The first 1 or 2 years, it was a real struggle because I've never been a teacher before. This generation of kids is very new to me. Other than my nephew, I've not seen many other children of this age group. So all of that was a huge challenge in the first years. But now this is my 5th year in Prakriya. And I would say with children who've been, we've traveled together for 4 or 5 years, we have a great bond. And our class is super fun. Yeah, there is fun. Plus, there is also the rigor that I keep in mind while preparing my lesson plans. So through crafting, I make sure there is a physical, intellectual, emotional, and a psychic, spiritual approach that I do in the craft space. Yeah, some things from Bhoomi was the circular seating structure that we have in our craft room in school. And I've also brought in the student-led sessions. At Bhoomi, we would have student-led sessions. So that we do in school also. Even in online, it's been going well. So children are voluntarily, they come forward to do some things that they've learned at home from YouTube, from somewhere, but they share it with the group. So it's a good experience for children too. And the focus is not on the product, but the process. Because I always believed in craft as a form of sadhana, where when you're making something, it is your entire body that you're engaging, your body, mind, and soul. We say it's the head, heart, and hands union that comes together when we work with the hands. And with children, at least some of them, I would say, definitely experience that. And there's a very good feedback cycle through PTMs also. So I've had a parent telling me, you've done some magic on my child. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And even children during sessions, there was a child last year who said, Auntie, I'm so proud of myself. So for me to hear that, maybe the child would have forgotten, I don't know, but that I was able, that I was a contributor to that little moment of happiness is a huge, I take it very preciously. And these are all memories that I've been having with the school children. Yeah, so craft definitely, we all know there are a lot of benefits with the hand-eye movement, the gross and fine motor skills, a better concentration, attention, and all of that is definitely there. But I also introduce craft as a sadhana, where there are some crafts where I insist on silence, some crafts, yeah, so different kinds of crafts, which I will talk about in the next cycle. We also focus on refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle. We mostly work with, at school, it is mostly recycled paper or fabric, recycled fabric, old fabrics that we work on. The buds principle is something we learned from Satish ji's mother, I guess, who brought buds principle. So it's beautiful, useful, durable, sustainable. And every year I focus on the useful part more, because what we understand from the buds in one look is just the external kind of usefulness. Even when I ask children, the first answer I get is, Auntie, we make a pen stand, we use it. Auntie, we make a gift box, we use it. So it is only an external form of a kind of consuming something. But I tell them, can we also look in the inner, what happens when you work with your hands? And then when they start thinking, like, oh yeah, Auntie, there was one time when I was very angry. And then, yeah, I did some art and craft, and then really lightened me up. My mood was good. So I say, see, that is also a kind of usefulness that you can say with crafting, with hands on, need not be crafting alone. I say art and craft and any such form of activities. academics and crafts is something, if not for Bhoomi and if not for engineering. Yeah, this is where I appreciate me being an engineer, because, and I realized this during our interaction with the Ashoka group, Ashoka Changemaker group. So, yes, yeah. So until then, I would always complain about having done engineering instead of architecture. But then they said, see, it is a kind of training. Engineering need not necessarily only be about electronics and communication and DSP and ADSP and all of that. But there is also a kind of training that you are learning while engineering, because engineering is a kind of making. All engineers are makers in some form. So that kind of a training, along with Bhumi's this approach of ask questions, do not give an answer directly to the child. Those were very, very difficult for me initially. Even when I went for observation at Prakriya, it was very difficult to see, teachers not giving the child a direct answer. And then I was like, why don't you just give him or her the answer? But when I became a facilitator, I do understand why you have to not give some answers. You let them think on their own, explore answers in amongst themselves also. So there is a huge group interaction that happens during class, even helping each other. So last year there was this class where one child was struggling with a little origami fold, and the rest of the class, all of them pitched in. Hey, try this way, try that way. All of us are trying it in different angles, trying using different terms. And finally, after 20 minutes, he was able to do that origami fold. And it was a moment of celebration in class. All of us clapping hands and whatnot. So it is like children also learn to help each other in that sense, not only with crafting, even I think it is a life skill that they learn through craft and such things. Parent-teacher meetings also, I like parent-teacher meetings because there are grandparents coming sometimes. And grandmothers begin with their stories of how their craft was, what kinds of craft they did. When they got married, they moved places, and then they started doing this, doing that. And then for me, it is like, yeah, good old days. And I might get some ideas which I might note down and perhaps work on it and such things. Sorry, I was talking about academics and crafts. So, so there, um, yeah. So what I do is age appropriately, there are concepts of max being introduced, like for the younger age groups. So I work with from primary till 8th standard. So for the younger age groups, we would say shapes, rectangle, you make a square, from a square to a triangle. So there are basic shapes like that. When it comes to say middle school level, I talk about angles. So I say perpendicular, or when you're making a flower, it is a circle first, then a 180 degrees, then a 90-degree quadrant. So there are those max terms that come, or there is circular geometry that we use sometimes, or this piece is called an octahedron. Can be blown, but it doesn't work with me. Yeah, something like this. So yeah, octahedron, or this particular 3D model. So these are all ways in which a little bit of max can be incorporated, or even storytelling. So with the children, it's very interesting that I don't think I've ever told stories to my son, bedtime stories to my son. But at school, through craft, I do make an attempt to learn about the craft. And so these are called puff stars. If you can see, these are called puff stars. And there's a tiny story behind this star. These are called lucky stars also. So there's a story behind this, and children are like, wow, so nice. So that captures their interest. And this year, I started with the origami paper crane, which also has a story of Sadako and the 1,000 paper cranes. So that is a story of peace and positivity. And I thought that is very necessary for this year. So we started this year's crafting with making paper cranes. And there are children who said, yeah, auntie, I'll try making 1,000 paper cranes and all of that. But yeah, so through storytelling, there is a little bit of language learning that happens. Even dream catchers. So children get so inspired by those stories, they make it. There was a child who made it as an anniversary gift to her parents. So there are a lot of personal handmade giftings happening that way, and they do share all of that with me. It really feels a lot of uplifting and a moment of joy then. So yeah, crafting at Prakriyas, again, I can go on and on. There is a good community also I share. Not only the professional space at Prakriya, but also on the personal front. There is a good group of adult community that I get to interact and engage with, who are always there. So through Bhoomi, I've made this big network of friends I can call back on any time I need them. They're always there for me. So yeah, next, yeah. Next slide is a few pictures of crafts that we do in school. So yeah, some simple crafts like the one on the left side for primary. And then there are challenging crafts like the cube is a puzzle. So I only show them the how do you make the piece of the cube. And then there is a teamwork, or they keep thinking of how do you form it into a cube. So there is a lot of logical thinking that happens then. Then material wise also we try working with uh, fabric and wool. So yeah, something called Kumihimo bracelet was something we did recently. That is a kind of, it's a repeated step, but you can make friendship bands out of it. And I introduce such crafts as a mantra. In this bookmark, these bookmarks are repeated steps. Even boondoggling, this is called boondoggling, and children are crazy about boondoggling in school. So it is a repeated step, and I introduce it to them as a mantra. So then there is silence in class. They're all very, very engaged and involved in the craft form. And I don't think there are many other spaces where they can do some kind of a mindful activity of that sort. So I really make sure I introduce such crafts. Then festival crafts like the Christmas tree or something, or if Diwali, we do some Diwali lamps. The lotus below was a student-led session. I learned that from one of my last year 7th grade students. Then the mask, thanks to Corona, we started making masks last year, and this year we've tried different kinds of masks. Yeah, the bottom left is the paper crane, Orizuru. And then useful products like the box and a lot of things like that. And the mouth was one fun class that we had. The one in the bottom was, and one child said, "Auntie, this is so spooky. I'm going to throw it away right after class." So I get to hear such comments also. But it's fun with children. I'm always alive and young when I'm with children. Adil, next. Yeah. Now, why craft? I think it must be obvious by now why I do crafting. I can just not give up on crafting. Yeah, the inner and external joy that crafting brings, I don't know, I haven't experienced that through any other form. And there is scope for continuous learning, sharing. And yes, this statement that Sita always says, second largest employment sector in India after agriculture. Also to create a better surrounding through conscious crafting is something that I try. So in the Hastakala front, I also explore other kinds of working with waste. Like these bags are made from plastic grocery packets and combined with fabric lining. So these have been going strong since 2 years. But then there is a feedback that I'm always open to, like Hara said. So there they say, Smitha, try not combining different kinds of materials. So this has a fabric lining. And then I tried, this is only milk packets. Then there is no confusion of combining different materials. So in this also really the 79 milk packets. So I try such kind of products at home. So Hastakala is a lab for me. It's like a chemistry lab that goes on. There are a lot of failures, a lot of learnings. And then, yeah, the picture on the left is when I'd gone to Gumlapuram, the Bhoomi space at Gumlapuram with Deepak, and he'd taken me to the women's houses there, and we had started with learning boxes of this kind. So paper boxes of such kind. So as a form of sustainable livelihood, there are groups working on it. There is some group called Wellpaper Auroville in Pondicherry, and such groups do exist. So I wanted to start something like this. There was a 2-day workshop there. But then the pandemic happened and we haven't done much after that. But yeah, that is something I really, really want to go ahead with. Then, yeah, more wealth waste. Coconut shell is my recent learning. And the picture on the bottom was from last month. There was this program called E-Commune organized by Karunachal Foundation. So that again was through Deepak. And this was a group of people doing different activities in the sustainable field. So there was mushroom growing, microgreens, somebody working on recycled paper, a lot of different such things, upcycling. So through them, I got in touch with Sahrita upcycling, and this is my recent project happening. So such fabric scraps converted to pet beds. So this is something, a work in progress that's happening currently. So there are such experiments in the background happening, and sales. I'm very poor at sales and marketing and all of that. So I don't know. That is always a question mark. But I would definitely try to get into that. Really want to, because the amount of things I can stack up at home is limited. So yes, that is something I have to try. And then, yep, that finishes this. Next is a video slide, Adil.
So, Smitha, I was wondering if we could do the video after all the speakers speak.
Yes.
They're just running a little schedule. All right.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So the video is just a picture collage of all the products done at school, at Hasta Club through the last 10 plus years. So that's it. The last slide is thank you. Thank you for listening to me for so long.
Thank you, Smitha. That was amazing. I really felt like wanting to do some craft work like while I was watching that. So
Ho jayega, some workshop Bhoomi.
Thank you so much.
All. Thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, next up is Dharmesh, who also may be described by some people as weird and silly. But I think I've got to know him for the past 5 years. We've shared deep, long conversations on everything from consciousness to whether roadside noodles is good for your health or not. Like, it's been all across the board. I think when I think of Dharmesh, the quote that comes to my mind is like, life is movement. Like, so for me, he sort of embodies that. He's like physically, or he's always thinking about things. And I saw that when Bhoomi co-hosted Learning Societies and Conference in 2017. So we worked together. Harsh is here, that I work closely with. So in fact, I do see some similarities between, at one point I was working with Harsh, and then internally at Bhoomi I was working with Dharmesh. So yeah, I think that's where I noticed how much effort he puts in, making things happen. And he's fully committed to learning and doing. And I think that's what I have noticed about Dharmesh, somebody who may also give the impression of being silly, but is really a deep thinker and a very passionate and empathetic person. So Dharmesh, because we are sort of running short on time, I cut down my long intro. I'll let you take over with your quirky presentation, please.
Sure. Thank you, Adil. Yeah, I don't know if I'm all that what you have said, but I really appreciate that. Adil, should I share the screen, or
you can let me know what works for you better. We could do that.
You can share the screen.
Great, I'll do that.
Okay. On Vaishnavi's, yeah. So I'm sharing my. First of all, let me just. I'm not that comfortable talking like in straight, like Smitha was. But I really appreciate what Smitha has been talking about. I think it's listening to her and her work itself, it brings a lot of resiliency within me. So crafting can be a great resiliency building tool. So thank you, Smitha. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you, Dharmesh, and sorry to
thank you, Smitha. So I was sharing like journey of listening to my own self and bringing some sort of peace to my unrest being. While the presentation is coming up, would just give me my own background. I stay in Bombay and I stay with my family. It's a joint family. I used to work into IT industry. I did my computer science from Bombay. Worked for 15 years, and primarily like in 2000 started the unrest of the competition, clarity of where I'm going, or a lot of suppressed anxiety towards how I'm contributing towards Mother Earth, and growing anxiousness towards climate change. All this sort of mixed sort of emotions and unrest with all that was growing year by year, and there was always two beings within me. Are you sharing the presentation, Abdul?
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so with that background, lot of us cooking within me, and I guess many would correlate that that doing that such kind of any transition is quite difficult, and now I can look back and see it was all within me. So this small some presentation where the pursuit was always to listen to myself, how I can be more authentic to myself rather than what's happening in the outside world. So that kind of stubborn I am. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah. So yeah, I just shared does buying more things, improving your own efficiency, all the corporate jargons that work harder when join more workshops and climb up the corporate ladder. Somewhere, I mean, when I listen to myself, I said this is not the path which I wish to take in. Where yeah, so it was enough for me. So somewhere 2017, I decided that I wish to do something else. Now, with the next big question, what something else you would do? If you are a primary bread earner and typically if you're staying in noble life where stopping yourself, listen to yourself, or the question is of the survival, if I may talk about Bombay particularly. So all those things was cooking up, and I literally listed down uh, where would I want to take my life ahead, and the top three things that came to my mind was I wish to do something with ecology, with healing, and something with children. So all these things somewhere brought me, and somehow if you can go to the next slide. Uh, yeah, so in a way you can see uh, that kind of life state I was in, all within cooking myself and what to do. And I could connect now this happening with a lot of people within urbanites, where Smitha mentioned about your own identity crisis, and unable to connect people, and with people going in normal BAU mode and not self-reflecting upon our own actions, or where do I want to go. All this was like, that's the expression I could find out, and say there is more to life than this. So yeah, so if you can go to the next slide. So Bhoomi happened in 2017. I was there in the community 2017-18, where the big thing that happened to me was validation of the unrest, validation of all things that going within me is not just some might say as a case study for depression. That was it's a most practical and most realistic pointers that your life or being is telling you to take a different route now, where that's what when I found a lot of people in my group. We were 35 to 36, were having same kind of upheavals within themselves. So Bhumi gave us kind of platform to bring all that unrest and give that some sort of channelizing to the unrest, being the energies that's been locked while you're staying in an urban setup. So that was big thing for me. So I could sense freedom within me. I liked slowness, living a slow life. I got a lot of grounding with a lot of workshops, and the setup, the ambience of Bhoomi itself brings a lot of grounding, a lot of earthiness, and a lot of deep conversation with the entire group, and it's opened up a whole lot of a community outside Bhoomi as well, who have gone a similar unrest or similar journey, and that sort of. So that gave me a lot of grounding, and yeah, more I was pulled towards, like, we were exposed to a lot of things in Bhoomi, say natural farming, waste management, communication, lot of things. I got more pulled towards soil. That was like one of my nature spirit. I identified. So soil, water, forest, and biodiversity. These were like, I was like, these are the areas I wish to commit my life, because deep down, in a the process of analyzing what you should do and what should not do, I found like more meaningful to work with soil, because the entire existence of life depends on these four five things: soil, water, forest, biodiversity, and seeds. And then rest of the things comes. And I luckily have to, I just love soil. I mean, the way so much of life within is there, and so much of interaction that's going on within at any point of time. And it's lot of, and then soil diversity that we have across the country. So I get more towards soil, water, and forest. Also, Bhumi gave a platform to a lot of unlearning, and let life emerge. And that was something, was big thing, like big shaking thing, where uh, we are trained to be everything planned, everything, structured, everything, to things to know before, ahead of time. That was thing. Let life emerge. Let we flow. Focus on inner ecology. This I could, unless I work on my inner ecology, even if I'm working on farm or on plants, or but if my inner ecology is not sorted or is not at rest, then it affects, even if I'm staying in jungle as well. So that was like one thing, it's a prime, like I have to work on my ecology, and let the rational thinking comes up. Not so that was like, these are the few key impressions that I have. And I decided to have as much as nature centric, and slow, purposeful life. These are the some of the pictures. I call them as my soul tribe, because I connect with every one of them. The holy picture is a most like memorable picture of my of Holi, and these are a few of the pictures. I still connect with each and every one of my family, Bhoomi family. And yeah, that was like one of the key highlight, the strong bonding between each of the Bhoomi members within of my batch, and we still continue to do that. So that's a great thing. Yeah, next slide. So post Bhoomi, probably, Farah, Ishita, or Adil would definitely know that, there's a lot of things within me, within at my home, or and the background was happening, and the anxiety of what next, where would my livelihood come. The sector is so different, and I do not know so many things, and it takes a while to, have a steady livelihood. Having a transition from an IT background livelihood to a more simpler, more humble livelihood. That was a big question I would have sorted out. But my being wanted to explore more, learn more. So I went to, like, Alap in Champawat, Uttarakhand, to learn. forest models, particularly Miyawaki. I also spent some time at my friend's farm in Rajkot, Atal from a Bhoomi batch. I wanted to work with my hands and legs, rather less with my mind and planning, which I've done throughout my life. And that gave me, working with hands and legs and intuition, gave me a lot of peace. So preparing a Ganga model, and also learned forestry, native forest creation in one of the Swami Samarth Mutt. It's in Srivardhan. It's in Konkan region of Maharashtra. Various kinds of forests that we can create. So I discovered there's so much of indigenous traditional knowledge, and which unfortunately it's there in the regional languages, and I mean I could connect with Marathi more. So I explored more in Maharashtra, that what kind of forestry models that we have. Also, I spent some time in Polymath School. It's an alternative school where bringing school in the farm, or teaching farming in the school, and building and making natural products. That I spent some time in Polymath school. And also, if you can see, I've like my interests have been going in various things, and I used to consider that's a problem, and I need to stick at one point and then do. But then I realized there are a lot of people like me whose interest keeps on hopping, and that's pretty okay actually. So the day I accepted that that's my nature, that helped me move on. So seed conservation with Sahaja seeds in Mysore. I spent some time over there. How do they do? How they built up the farmer producing company for seeds. So that's what I learned. I also spent some time in Aranya, and doing a community project and doing my permaculture course, land designing, working with soil, bringing out the traditional knowledge of various practices. So that was a good learning experience and grounding experience to work with Narsan and team over there. Yeah. So these are some of the highlights that I'm just mentioned. Yeah. Finally, like for the grounding part, I was still doing a lot of volunteerism, but in terms of getting some kind of stable livelihood, that's why I was struggling. And so I found finally in 2020, November, December, with working with a working group for women's land rights and ownership. That's WGWLO in Gujarat. This was my first attempt to work in a rural sector, in development sector, in agriculture. Uh, there I was working as an agriculture officer, where how we can realign natural farming practices in all the they call it Swabhumi Kendras, which are actually community centers located in rural villages and cities, and that too across Gujarat. And I learned in across Gujarat also there's so much of diversity in soil, traditional practices of farming. Adivasi practices are completely different from a region where a lot of water would be there. So I learned that there's a lot of traditional knowledge that exists, which is unfortunately is not of is not documented, and lot to learn from farmers. I mean, I was always a learner, though I was welcome as an agriculture officer, but the farm, and particularly with women, because this group works with women only. A lot of harsh realities with respect to agriculture in farming is it's very heartening actually, because 90% of the work in agriculture is done by women, and they don't have land rights of the farm, which brings a lot of injustice when it comes to subsidy offering, or even choice of crops that they want to do. So that was like harsh realities I met with. So it's quite it was quite complex. I wanted to more work on the ground, but unfortunately, it more was a monitoring and that kind of role. So and due to certain family situation, I had to move out from that. Now, what next? I was always contemplating with all the skills that I have about land designing, about some grounding in agriculture, and in forest also. Uh, Most of the time, I also thought, and I'll be very honest, to go back to my IT world and always give interview also. So I was moving on and off in this. In these things. So, but then finally, C balance happened, and the only thing I was ready to work with because of the people. People do understand emergency towards climate change, emergency to respond, emergency to challenge the status quo, asking corporates to clean up their acts. Very hardly few, I would say, green companies. Even I think in 2018 we did a with Bhoomi, exploring what are the green opportunities that we have for people like staying in urban areas. It was a good exploration and could find out there are hardly very few, you know, green companies that really work on climate change or on farming, on ecology related work. And I happen to work with, now I'm working with Sea Balance, who build sustainable strategies for corporates, who do market researches for climate change, for building the circular economy strategies, and also sustainable cooling solutions in urban areas. This is something I'm like also involved with, where people who are working in shanty areas, like patrika houses, how we can have them ambient uh, cooling needs, because a lot of people face heat problems during October, during summer times. So how we can have using sustainable architecture with some architecture low cost solution, how we can reduce in-house temperature, and that too at people which nobody works with, the low class of economy in urban areas. So that I'm quite excited. So so these are the like some of the learnings. I am at peace at this point of time, but I still have dream of setting up my own farm and working with my hands and legs, and less with laptop. Yeah, I'll just share in a brief, Adil, if you go to the next step, some of the hard learnings that I have learned. Bhoomi has always been a great platform, and even post Bhoomi, even to express yourself or connect to various people, I can still be always vouch for that. So that's a great platform I always have. Inner ecology, working in like having that harmony is most important. Or else, with all the skills as well, I may not be able to achieve what I wish to do. So that's what's my great learning has been. Family support system is very important, which my case were like on and off, and wasn't that the things which I would expect. So, but that's a part of reality. I've accepted to do that smooth transition, have more realistic and pragmatic approach, and have more grounding, and not stay in a more more rosy picture. It's not that. That's what I found it. That what you know. Some of the website shows it's not that easy for sure. Planning the transition, which I did, but it can go haywire, particularly with emergency that happens if you're staying in a city, like particularly medical emergency. One thing I can share with a lot of moving around, a lot of opportunities to work in development sector in rural areas. If I may quote, I think when I talked to was in Champawat, the CDO of there, he really welcomed the urbanites who have skill of planning and have working with corporates, they do really welcome urban people who have great knack towards climate change or wish to work. Yeah, this is the last not to burn bridges who differs from your views. I did that for quite a lot, but then I realized it's not going to help me. So it again comes to having harmony within myself, and it's okay if you have various kind of interests, but going in depth, having working experience does help, and collaborations and networking. I found now it's because many times I couldn't open up and connect to people, but now I think I realize it's very important, and things can there are a lot of helping people. If I am open up, a lot of people who will definitely help you. A lot of good network around the country. So yeah, just a snapshot of my world journey after Bhoomi. Yeah, thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you, Dharmesh, for that. Yeah, I think very rich experience and learnings that many youngsters, many people who want to make the transition would find helpful. So thank you for that. I'll let Ishita introduce Vaishnavi then quickly.
Thank you, Dharmesh. I think that was really nice to see the transitions that you have made. Our next speaker would be Vaishnavi. So I'll do a quick intro of her. I think we've kind of overshot time, as Adil said in the beginning. So Vaishnavi for me is a person who is a social influencer, if I may say so. A gentle soul, but very fiery and passionate about the work that she does. I think from very early on, she was very sensitive to the disparity and the discrimination that happens everywhere in and around wherever she was growing up. And I think that led her to start volunteering at a very early age. I think she started volunteering first, and then she is the co-founder of Bhoomi, and currently she is the executive director. This is the Bhoomi, which is BHUMI. And so she's part of two of these organizations or institutions which are called Bhoomi, which is interesting. She's a person who has done her master's from the UK and then transitioned into the education and the social sector, if I may say so. So she is conceptualized this whole school transformation program, which is run by Bhoomi. And she works with children, with teachers, with schools to look at changes that can be made. She is passionate about, I think, what she calls social emotional development of children and teachers, right, Vaishnavi? Correct me if I'm wrong. And I think this program started sometime in 2017.
Yeah, just after college.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll talk about that. They also run a fellowship, which is very interesting. It's for young leaders who want to work in the field of education and educational equity. She's a very passionate person who loves connecting with people, I think children and adults equally. She lives in Mumbai, and I think the rest I will leave to her to take forward. So Vaishnavi.
Chennai auntie. I live in Chennai.
Okay, sorry.
Smitha raised her eyebrows.
Yeah,
No, Smitha,
yeah.
I haven't moved.
Yeah. No. She hasn't moved. She's very much in Chennai.
Yeah.
And thank you. So we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, auntie, and thank you, Smitha and Dharmesh, for sharing your journeys. As you were sharing, I actually saw a lot of me, in your sharing, and only for me to realize that it's actually Bhoomi College that was there in your narratives. So that's something that I see as a common thread, and that's just beautiful for me. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen to talk about how Bhoomi's journey is enabling me in the work that I do. Right. So just going to talk a little bit about why do I do what I do. Like Ishita Aunty mentioned, I started my work in the ed sector as a volunteer almost 14 years back. And the idea was to just do something, because back then I was very cynical. I knew that nothing, I told myself that nothing was going to change. You know, kids will continue to beg on the streets. There will be a huge gap in learning and things like that. And only when I started volunteering did I realize that those were all excuses. Those were all stories that I had made for myself. And there were actually a lot of people out there who were doing something and in their own ways. While my effort was to, give or contribute something that every child, we work with shelter homes in Chennai and 11 other cities across the country. And when I say we, it's Bhoomi, the NGO. So if I'm going to be referring to Bhoomi, I will say Bhoomi College, and Bhoomi, the NGO, would be Bhoomi, just for ease of understanding. So at Bhoomi, I started teaching at a shelter home. And with time and acquiring some amount of experience of being in the domain, I realized that the issues that I had as a child in my school was very similar to the issues that children were experiencing today. So nothing much had changed, and it was not just my story, it was hundreds of other children's stories as well. So the idea became stronger, or the thought or the trigger became stronger when in my interaction with one of my children, John Basha, I kind of understood how competition had stifled him, and how societal expectations were kind of hindering him from what he could actually be. So I think I drew a lot of inspiration from that story, and that was when I moved my focus, or the epicenter of my work, from volunteering and shelter homes to schools. So I wanted to go a little deeper, and I asked myself, we're volunteering over the weekends to be with children, to teach them English, math, science, computers, and a whole lot of other things. But what would it be to build or work or create systemic change? And by that I mean schools that are affordable, private or low income schools, where the access is limited, where opportunities are most often limited. So how can school be redefined for these children was a trigger that kept coming back to me. And that's when I was also exploring some opportunities. What next for me to understand more about education, because all that I've acquired as skills and knowledge were largely from my volunteering experiences. So I was looking for something more formalized, something where I could be with a group of people to learn from, and a very practical approach also. So I was kind of weighing courses, and I had my discussion with Farah Aunty, only to realize that Bhoomi College would be a space where a lot of this would be practical, all the more because Prakriya is attached to it. And whatever I was learning in the classroom, in the space with my facilitators, I could very well get to observe it in action in the classrooms at Prakriya. So the connection just came alive for me. And I'm a very visual person. I love to be engaged in processes. So something, frankly, when I saw the website, I didn't understand anything. What is this inner outer ecology? Where am I going? But then it just felt right. And the calling was so strong that, I decided to take up the course, moved to Bangalore for 8 months. My family was super supportive in saying, okay, just go and do whatever you want while we, hold the fort here in Chennai. So I took the opportunity, and that's when I pursued the holistic education program at Bhoomi. I think that was an eye-opener because I had a lot of biases. When I look back, these are biases that I had. One simple thing being English is essential to make it big in this world was something that I was very strongly holding on to, and every child should learn English. But then when I went in there, I also learned about bilingual approaches, why it is important to start with your mother tongue, and a whole lot of other things, and the opportunities and how agency can be built in the child when certain processes are designed around the way they learn. So moving our focus from the teacher to the child became very exciting for me. And every module, I think we started the education modules only by end of December or January. Until then, a lot of what we did was on the self, and that was very exciting. That was something least expected as well. So that journey was very nourishing. Because it helped me. I always say that, this is like an onion, and Bhoomi helped me unpack every layer of that onion, just unpeel and say, why, so, or why not? So, and very gentle way that, it's not very overpowering. Some of the questions that we are asked, or that we expect, or we get to reflect on, a very soft yet powerful way of exploring yourself. So that is something that I thoroughly enjoyed. So that was I felt very renewed. I felt like a new person. I had gone to Bhoomi College with some challenges in my personal and professional life. So I was able to unpack that as well. And I was able to unpack that as well. And I came back much stronger with newer perspectives of how I could be in relationships. So that was one aspect. With respect to school as an ecosystem, right? I saw Prakriya come together as one unit, and that's when I realized that you don't have to attack or address the problem through just one lens, like the teacher. Every unit in the school had to come together to put the puzzle together and say, okay, this is one big image. So I saw children, I saw how some of the actions that the children were performing or they were doing, and some of the thoughts that the teachers believed in or the management believed in. So there was a lot of coherence in what they said, what they did, and what they believed. And that really stood out for me. And that's another thing that I brought back to Bhoomi. So after the course at Bhoomi College, when I got back to Chennai, it wasn't very hard. It wasn't very easy, because I had spent 8 months in a setup that was, in my opinion, very ideal, right? The people that I loved and the people who shared my beliefs, it was very easy to strike a conversation with them. And not that we didn't challenge each other as well. So, but we enjoyed being challenged in that space. A lot of life was just sustainable. So it just felt like very perfect. But when I got back to Chennai, there was a lot of dissonance, and I felt very lost for the first 2 months. I don't know what to do. I didn't like the traffic sounds, and then something as basic as that was, putting me off. But I think with some determination there, I said, okay, so we went there with a purpose in mind, and how are we going to apply it here? Because I also realized that something alternative, when it needs to be scaled, what are some things that you need to keep in mind? Because Bhoomi as an organization works at scale, because a problem is also so huge, right? I mean, working with just one government school might not really impact the child or the cause in any way. So how am I going to scale it to 20 schools? So the concept of scaling alternative ways of learning was something that I was left with, or I walked in with when I got back to Chennai. And for one thought that really excited me was the socio-emotional skills, like Rishita Aunty shared, and particularly for the teachers. I started working with the teachers in terms of getting them to unpack themselves, so that how are they better, how do they become better facilitators for the children, right? So for me to have a strong relationship with the other, in this case, the child, I need to have a strong relationship with myself. So we designed a lot of workshops that again questioned them, challenged them, that spoke a lot about the strengths as well, a space that teachers don't often get. Teachers from low income schools with very little opportunities get. We realized that when was the last time did you appreciate yourself was the most powerful question that we probably asked them, because you don't tend to appreciate yourself, and particularly when you have a lot of expectations that come in when you, as a teacher. So that the first 2 years where went in setting up the project, and from within the organization, from Bhoomi, I've always had that liberty to experiment or explore and kickstart new things here. So I was again pushed. Pushed to ask, why only SEL? Why only for teachers? Think big. How do you look at school as one unit, and I was immediately able to make that connection with Bhoomi or Prakriya, the school as one unit, and what I saw there. So I started making those connections, like what would happen if, one of the schools that I work with were to become a Prakriya here for children from low income communities. That was very exciting. And that's when we designed the whole school transformation approach, which I'll be talking a little bit about. So what do we do right now? And the whole school transformation approach over time has also become a fellowship, because we work with a lot of youngsters who can eventually come into the ed space. A lot of us, traditional schooling has encouraged us to be engineers and doctors, but not teachers, but not great teachers. So how can you actually become an influencer in the child's life? How can you nurture people to think about education as a full-time opportunity? Is what the entire program is built on. So when we place a fellow in a low income or an affordable private school here in Chennai, there are 5 areas that they focus on. One is they teach. To empathize with the teacher, you need to teach. You need to understand what lesson planning is, what multiple intelligences is, otherwise I'm just going to go in with a lot of biases, thinking that I know better than you. We really didn't want that to happen. And to kind of neutralize the equation there, we thought that you need to be a teacher. So our fellows teach foundational literacy and numeracy, that is math and English. In doing so, they also work very closely with our teachers. So one practice that we've taken from Prakriya and Bhoomi are the sharing circles and the learning circles. So just the basic principle of emphasizing the circle setup, for example. So why is it so important to break down authority in the classroom? And why is it also important for the teachers to be given space to share the grows and the glows, right? Not just talk about challenges, but talk about what you have done well and what is something that is working for you that the other person can also take on. So we work directly with the teachers through innovative pedagogy and particularly through technology, because a lot of these teachers from these schools are very senior, 20 and 25 years of experience. And when a young fellow who's just about 20, 22 walks into the school, there's a little bit of reluctance and resistance to adapt or even listen to this person. It's like, your age is my experience, and we hear a lot of those things as well. But it is very exciting. The process is exciting as much as it is challenging. So how do you work with the teachers in making pedagogy more innovative, in making learning more exciting for the child? And in the process, how can, you can put back more enthusiasm for the teacher also. We also work very closely with the school leaders, because most often they end up doing administrative work. They're involved in census taking. They're involved in, right now, because of COVID, a lot of these schools have been converted into camps, vaccination camps. So there's a lot of administrative work that they continue to do. So how can you just pause? How can you zoom out, and how can you create that vision for your school is something that a lot of our school leaders, when I say school leaders, it's the HM, our HMs are unable to do. So getting them to pause and reflect and go a little deeper in what are the different possibilities for my school has become something very core to the work that we do. Parents largely from low income communities, not to say that they don't care, they do care, but because of other priorities, because of the socioeconomic background that they come from, they're unable to invest or they're unable to participate in the child's well-being. So how do you strengthen the partnership with the school, right? So the fellow is a kind of a mediator or a bridge between the parent and the school in terms of saying that, hey, these are some questions that you can ask the school, you can hold them accountable, or this is how you can participate through, an SMC or a committee. So those are some things that we're doing with the parents. And the other aspect is also being infrastructure. There are a lot of children, but very few classrooms, very few desks and toilets and basic things. So we identify the basic needs and we also fulfill the infrastructure needs of the children. So this is a kind of a program, but what is this built on, and how does this tie in with my journey at Bhoomi is what I'm going to be talking about. Because the fellow's journey is as critical and as important as the child's journey in the fellowship or the school's journey in the fellowship. We have built their journey on 12 to 13 critical competencies, which have been broken down as leading self, leading others, and leading impact. Like I said, you need to know yourself to be able to work with the other. So I've just kind of put that in bold because this entire vertical for me has been built on Bhoomi's principles. Bhoomi College's principles, where the focus is a lot on reflection. How do I, and it can be both in the personal and the professional space. So one is we also do a river of life exercise every year for the incoming cohort, for which I take support from Rama and we keep going back on how to facilitate these circles and things like that. So that is very exciting for me, because at the end of that session, even if it is one session, it becomes, we all walk out with that energy that, hey, this is my journey and I would like to embrace it. And this is what I am capable of, irrespective of some of the challenges that I've come through. Humanizing themselves becomes a very important piece here. And like Smitha said, learning to appreciate yourself, learning to accept yourself becomes an important part here. And that is the first step of awareness. How do you manage? That becomes a second piece of leading self. So one is I've realized, okay, these are my challenges. This is what I'm great at. How am I going to regulate my emotions? All the more because I'm going to be working with children in the classroom. I need to be patient. And I'm going to be working with stakeholders who have many, many years of experience, and change is not going to happen overnight. So usually there are a lot of conversations, particularly the initial conversations, year one in the fellowship is very frustrating, right? Because your teacher's doesn't want to listen to you. Your teacher says, who are you? Why, what are you doing here? So how do you unpack and how do you work with that kind of attitude is the focus. And a lot of our process work goes, whatever I've learned at Bhoomi, we make very strong connections there. We design those learning circles based on the principles or the key levers that I've picked up from Bhoomi College. And like I said, I just keep going back to all our aunties to, kind of design these spaces for the fellows. The second component is leading others, where collaboration and communication become critical pieces. That's the second part that I learned at Bhoomi is I've never seen anything competitive at Bhoomi. Everything was built on collaboration. I think we saw this at Dharmesh's presentation. The last part was collaboration and networking. For me, collaboration is just a beautiful way of looking at life. And here, all the more it's important because a fellow is learning to influence without authority and every stakeholder in the system. So the focus of leading others would be communication and collaboration. Leading impact is because we see themselves as people who will be invested in education in the long run. We focus a lot on education, right? Education as a theme itself. What are some national and international trends? What are some policies? So it's a very zoomed out macro understanding of education, and we kind of bring in systems thinking into their way of operating or delivering or being in the fellowship itself. So this is just a small note on reach, but why I have put this down is for me to be able to scale from 5 schools to 100 schools is going to be a challenge, all the more because a lot of our processes also have to scale, which means that I have to be able to build reflection as a critical component in my fellows. Because reflection, like I said, is not just about their personal journey, but if they're going to do 5 sharing circles with the teachers, to even understand what the need is requires reflection. B, to execute the sharing circle, design and execute it. And C, to come back and say that this went right, this could have been better, and this needs to change. So the reflection as a skill needs to be scaled. So here the scale is not just of numbers, but in terms of, the values or the belief system needs to be scaled. And I believe that that's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I see that as a very exciting possibility for us. And I'm sure it's possible with a lot of people, right? So I believe that, when you're invested in that energy, you tend to attract that kind of energy your way. So I believe that we'll have the people who will be able to scale up the vision for us. Life as a Bhoomivasi, post Bhoomi College, I briefly shared that it was very hard to settle down, but once I did, like Smitha shared, I've been a very active ambassador or a champion of Bhoomi College. We keep coming back for Sankalan workshops, or we keep referring it to a lot of people around me, colleagues and friends, because we see the value the circle of process work brings to you. But in terms of my work, how has it enabled me? It's helped me build that clarity in why I do what I do. And that's been through holistic inquiry. asking yourself why, and then how are you going to do it, and then what are some things that you're going to do it. So kind of packaging it, and not just doing something because your heart says. Unfortunately, in the sector, nothing works like that. For me, even to pitch my program to a donor, I need to break it down. So that for me also comes from Bhoomi, where, you know, something as simple as a process perception workshop that Sita auntie did, that's something very powerful and still resonates very, I mean, it just sounds so high, I mean, loud in my head, is holistic inquiry. The other aspect is the culture is built on self-management. So whenever something, even something as small as losing your temper, so how do you, we'll say, okay, just pause, you need some time out, go reflect and come back. I know you're angry, I acknowledge your anger. So that kind of language that comes in, and now it's just like, okay, Vice says, I overuse filters and lenses in our workshops. So that's become, you know, my team has unfortunately labeled me that way, but that's very exciting. And to see youngsters reflect in this age and time is very exciting for me. So the possibilities that come with pause, reflect, and you know, respond is very powerful for us. The third aspect is the community. I think Smitha also shared, right? In being able to build that community. One is the community that I have at Bhoomi, which I'm still very comfortable, and I love reaching out to, you know, even if it is silly, weird, or whatever, anything fun, we're all there for each other. But just building off of that is also to build the community here in my work, that whatever I'm doing. And that we're doing it through three key values: ownership, collaboration, and care. Ownership is getting people to act or respond, right? And in saying that I would like to hold this. So over the 2 years of fellowship, our vision is for people to walk out and say that this is something that I want to do and I will do. The second aspect is collaboration. I've just spoken about that quite a bit. But collaboration for nonprofits is a bit of a challenge, because not every nonprofit is open to sharing what they create. So now with COVID, I think a lot of things have changed. We're seeing nonprofits collaborate because we've also realized that there is no point in holding on to what you create, because the problem is huge and we're all in it together. So building that spirit of collaboration, to be able to share resources, to be able to you know, exchange your best practices, has become the need of the hour. And that is something that we're actively building in the community, and a very strong principle that I have learned at Bhoomi. Simple example was the sports event that happens with children from the government school and Prakriya. You know, the teams are mixed up. It's not this school versus that school. So that's like amazing, right? I mean, you don't want children to compete, but it's a friendly match. We're in it together. So those are little things that really created a huge shift in me and kind of anchored me in collaboration and not competition. The third aspect being nurturing, right? So nurturing is not in the sense of nurturing the spirit that is inside of you. Where the focus is a lot on the inner ecology. Now I can very happily share inner ecology because I understand inner ecology with being, you know, with being with Bhoomi for so many years now. That is one of the focus areas that we have. So the mental well-being or the emotional well-being is something that we're really anchored in. Doing those check-in conversations, not just for the fellows, not just for the staff, but also with the teachers, also with the children. Right, so we do have a social emotional development program for the children to say, how am I feeling? And even if he says I'm angry this morning, it's absolutely okay. So I think creating that, normalizing our emotions, whatever the emotion be, is something that we are consciously striving to do here. So these are some pillars that we have created the program on, and a lot of this, as I shared, come from Bhoomi College. And I'm really grateful for the experience that I've had there. 50% Bhoomi's responsibility, 50% my responsibility. All that aside, I mean, it's an experience that really has shifted the way I see life. There's always a lot of energy. I think that I like people a little more. I love people a little more. And it's also because that I've learned to respect everybody's journey, irrespective of what it has been and who they are right now. And that kind of emotional maturity for me has come in because of all the work that we've done at Bhoomi. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. I think that was really well captured. I think all three journeys being so different, yet there are similarities which are there in each one of your journeys.
Absolutely, that's what I was wondering. Like, one is looking at how do we scale it? How do we look at impact as well while doing the inner work? Somebody is looking at craft. Somebody is looking at working on a farm. So much diversity within this group itself. Yeah. Thank you everybody for all the speakers. Thank you to all the speakers. I'm sorry, I'm a little hungry, so I'm a little disoriented. No, I'm just being honest. I don't want to put up a facade. Yeah, but thank you to all the speakers, Dharmesh, Smitha, Vaishnavi. Thank you for the people who joined in but now logged out. That's all right. You'll find value in it. And like I said, we'll put it up on YouTube and other places. And we found that people slowly discover our content. It's not viral at all, like what is happening. So our content goes slowly. People discover it sometimes 2-3 years after it's posted. So in those terms, we are bucking the trend of social media and other things. But yeah, I think this kind of sharing, we know, is not topical and is not going to date very easily. This is something that people will find enriching even years after it's done. Something that we have found with our magazine as well. Even though printed in 2009, 2010, it still has value. So I think that is our intent, that people find value in it, and we'll put it out there. And just want to thank all the three of you. Okay, somebody, there was a door knocking. Okay. Thank you everybody. Hope to see some of you in the next episode. I think it would be great. I think we have had alumni showing up for most of the episodes, and yeah, hopefully we'll see some of you during the next episode. Yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Take
all of
care.
you.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Sorry I
Adil.
took
Thank you,
so
everyone.
much time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Smitha will share the video. I'll add the video link and then finish the video.
Posting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
before posting.
Yes.
Don't.
Sorry, Dharmesh and Vaishnavi, I took your time.
No. I think they got to do that.
It's okay.
I
No,
didn't
it
even
was.
look at your message. I was so
No, it's
lost.
okay. It was beautiful.
Dharmesh's nephew.
Who is that, Dharmesh?
Yes, it's my nephew.
Yes.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. See
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Smitha, Farah,
Thank
Adil.
you.
Bye.
Bye, Dharmesh. Bye, Smitha.
Bye. Take care. Bye.
Yes.
Okay. Bye, Adil. See you
Bye.
Monday. See you Monday.
Bye.